The head of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, Rajendra Pachauri, has issued a warning on climate change, saying that, quote, "We have 5 minutes before midnight when it comes to the climate crisis." Now, of course, this comes from several weeks before releasing their fifth assessment report. Now, the first part of that, of course, will look at the scientific evidence for climate change, and to follow, two more reports will follow next year, focusing on the impacts and the options for tackling the problem. Now, the whole problem that we have is that we have no plan to tackle the problem, or we don't have the political will to tackle that problem. A leaked draft 2 weeks ago said that human activity is almost certainly the cause of climate change. Once again, saying that, I mean, these guys are scientists that are releasing this, and
what do they know?
What do they know? Only 97% of them agree that climate change is happening and it's man-made.
Yeah, did we really need a leaked draft of that to know that? I mean, it's funny that, you know, for us, that's just like another piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Right, and there's and that kind of goes to the what I'm going to get to later in the article. Actually, the IPCC is actually changing it instead of, you know, putting out one giant draft every 5 to 7 years that says, "Oh, climate change. We've been looking into it, and we think we're pretty sure that it's happening." They're going to stop doing that because, well, I'll get into that later. But first, I'm going to go on to what Pachauri says. He says, quote, "Humanity has pushed the world's climate system to the brink, leaving itself only scant time to act. We may utilize the gifts of nature just as we choose, but in our books, the debits are always equal to the credits. May I submit that humanity has completely ignored, disregarded, and been totally indifferent to the debits." He's just trying to say that, look, whatever we do, it's got a price. And the price is, it's coming no matter what, because we're not doing anything about climate change. Thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are, you've heard my thoughts before on some things of climate change, but one of my biggest thoughts that I always go back to on climate change isn't just climate change, it's environment in general. We live in a biosphere. You know, our resources are finite. We don't have infinite resources, and the other big point to that is that the Earth was not always inhabitable. At one point, our species would not have been able to live on the surface of this globe. Now, a lot of all the poisons and the gases and all of those different materials wound up settling, being into the ground, bedrocks. There's certain places where gases are trapped. You know, fuels are underground. The climate has changed to make the planet habitable. But what we do as a species is we try and go in and yank all of that terrible shit out and utilize it as a resource and expend it into the atmosphere and bring it back to the surface to try and make this biosphere not inhabitable again. And it doesn't make sense to do that. And it's also unnecessary. So I don't think it's just a matter of climate change. I think it's a matter of you know, of biosphere change. We have a finite environment, and we need to kind of care for it a little better. And to deny the major consensus in science as it's some conspiracy theory is just delusional.
It is delusional, but the thing is, the reason behind the delusion is the inconvenience of the truth. I mean, that's why Gore named his documentary An Inconvenient Truth. It's something that people did not listen to, the majority of people at the time, because it's so inconvenient. If you actually acknowledge that this truth is in fact true, then you have to change your lifestyle. You have to change the way you think. You have to change your attitude. This is you have to change your whole life. And for most people, they don't want to be bothered. They'd rather just ignore the truth and pretend that it doesn't exist and hope that they're right. So that's why you get such vehement, you know, hostile, even defensive denial of climate change, because they don't want to believe that they can do anything about it, because they don't want to do what is necessary.
Yeah, see, I think the denial comes from two places. We discussed it last time I was on the show. Number one is religiosity, which also I think correlates to intelligence, as has been shown recently, which means they just don't care, they don't have the foresight to care. But then the other one is money in politics. The fact that ExxonMobil, Chevron, BP, they lobby the shit out of our politicians when they're running their campaigns. So when those guys get in office, of course, they're going to do the bidding of those big oil companies, which, what do they want? They want you to do anything but cut into their profits, which means you have to not invest in green technology. But here's where I think it drives me the most nuts, right, is that global warming and climate change is actually this thing that's laying in front of us that is full of opportunity, because there are so many new fields that can exist as a result of it. I mean, if we heavily invest in solar or wind energy, or we have to remake the entire grid in the United States, or we have to remake our entire infrastructure to fall in line with these new things, or we have to invest in thorium, for example, which is a form of nuclear energy that has actually been called meltdown proof. It's nuclear energy, but it's meltdown proof. Why are we not investing billions of dollars in this? It's only going to help our economy, help us as a community and a society, and it's all positive things. I view it as a tremendous opportunity, but since there's money in politics and our politicians are idiots or corrupt, we're being held back from actually making a positive change and doing what we know makes sense and what we know is right.
Absolutely, and the reason and the problem is that they are both idiots and corrupt, because if they weren't so short-sighted, they would realize that even rich people will benefit from, going forward with climate change and alternative energies in the long term.
Look at who's on the science committee. The people on the science committee are the most brazen anti-science people. I mean, there are quotes of these guys literally saying we don't need to worry about the environment because God and the Bible say. I mean, that's insane. Or there's other guys who fucking quote, Alex Jones or quote Rush Limbaugh and say it's the biggest, climate change is the biggest hoax ever perpetuated. And I always love, have you ever tried to just ask any climate science denier, okay, so it's a hoax. Why? Just ask that one question. Why are they doing it? And then you don't have an answer. You're like, well, the thing is with the...
Well, let me bring two of your points together from both of you. I'd like to bring two of your points together. One, Al Gore's name of it being the inconvenient truth. The point that I'd like to make on that is it's not an inconvenient truth. It's a very convenient and opportunistic truth. It's just inconvenient for a few people. And those few, and unfortunately that small percentage of people tend to control the entire system. And that is really an askew problem that wolf-pack.com needs to work on to correct. But outside of that, there's also, when you're saying the marketing to the politicians, the marketing doesn't stop there. You want to talk about marketing, talk about this natural gas marketing. You can't tell me that you haven't seen the commercials for natural gas on TV. And let me tell you something, this isn't like going out to the grocery store and choosing whether you're going to buy freaking Cheer or Tide for your laundry detergent. They're not selling you anything. The only thing they're selling you is repetitive information to make you complacent to the use of natural gas. That is the only thing natural gas commercials are good for. They're not selling you a product. You're not going to all of a sudden go, hey, I fucking think I need to buy more natural gas all of a sudden. You don't fucking think that. You have an amount that you use. You have your daily routines that you use it in. The only thing that those commercials are doing is making you complacent to argue against it. That is the only purpose of those. So it's not just the politicians that are being coerced in that fashion. The general American public is being coerced with those commercials.
And that's that third layer that I wanted to actually kind of put on to both of you, to all of your points, is the media. The media has done an absolutely terrible job when it comes to informing Americans about what's really going on with the climate, why we should be concerned about the climate, and it also, what it does is that it has this false dichotomy. You bring on a climate denier, you bring on a scientist, and you give both of those points equal merit on time. And then people are like, well, I don't know, this guy said this guy said that, the news is calling it equal, I guess I'm just going to go with what the industry executive says.
Fair and balanced is
which one is most convenient to them. And I know, Kevin, you said that only a few people, will deny it because it's inconvenient, but it's not just the people at the top, it's not just the corporate people who are denying it because it's inconvenient to them. I'm talking about the people at the lowest levels, the people on, at the grocery store that you see, the people, in line at the bank. Regular people that I've talked to on a regular basis around here do not want to admit that climate change is real or a real issue or something that we can do anything about, because they do not want to change anything about their daily routines, their daily habits, their level of consumption, the level of trash. They don't want to do anything. They don't even want to think about taking renewable bags to the grocery store. Any kinds of steps, anything that could disrupt their routine or the way that they normally do things is something that they don't want to face. For instance, meat consumption. The factory farm industry, according to a UN study, contributes 50% more carbon emissions than all of the transportation systems in this world combined. Yet everyone gets defensive whenever anyone brings up the notion of even cutting back on our meat consumption. We can't have that. Gotta have our meat. People don't want to be disrupted from their lives, from their daily routines. They'd rather ignore the truth. That goes with regular people as much as the corporate people who want to take advantage and keep their profits up.
Well, that's done by a lack of education. And what people don't realize is that they would not even have to lower their consumption of meat products to bring this issue down. It's used in so many other things that it doesn't have to be. Additionally, the amount that you consume can lower in a very healthy level, and people wouldn't even notice it. It would just be less wasteful if the packages were changed, And it's just silly that it really wouldn't affect people so much on an individual level, and they don't even realize that because of one of the points that Jeff brought up, and that's because if people are given an equal stage of validity in what they have to say. To me, fair and balanced is a bullshit term when it comes to media.
Yeah, objective. That's all that matters is objective. I don't care about balance. Yeah, that's ridiculous. It's like, this guy says 2 + 2 = 2. This guy says 2 + 2 = 22. So let's have them both on.
Yeah,
don't care about the 22 guy. The 22
we
guy
report, you decide.
Yeah, and that's the problem is you don't give them any type of validity. You have to challenge the one that is false. There's false news, and and I understand a balance of opinion. But when we're arguing about facts and not opinions, then it's a freaking problem. I can respect libertarians all around the world, and I have great respect for them because they have a solid opinion, and a lot of times their opinions, they stick behind them, and whether they're beneficial or not, or whether I agree with them or not. But a lot of people who are libertarians still like facts. And Jeff has had some on his show, some real solid libertarians who, in the end, they still liked facts. So they just had a different opinion, and that is somebody that you can have a conversation with and you can compromise with.